Did you know? Some people are born carrying a life sentence not because of fate, but because of decisions made hundreds of years before they were even conceived. Every painful breath, every trembling hand, every crooked step, all caused by one cold obsession. To keep royal blood pure at any cost, this isn't legend. It's the true story that destroyed the lives of countless women in Europe's most powerful dynasties. For centuries, Europe's royal families didn't marry for love, they married for politics. Kings wed their nieces, queens married their cousins. Anything to ensure that blue blood was never diluted. But each union tightened the noose of genetics, creating a silent trap for their descendants. The Habsburg dynasty of Austria and Spain perfected this dangerous game. Their unofficial motto could have been, "Let others wage war, Austria shall marry." And marry they did, into themselves, generation after generation, until the damage was irreversible. In 1634, in the dim light of the Hofburg Palace, Maria Anna of Austria was born. Her back was sharply curved, her jaw jutted forward so far she could barely chew. Every meal became a slow ordeal servants, slicing meat into tiny pieces so she wouldn't choke. As she grew, she walked past the portraits of her ancestors and froze. The same jawline, the same twisted spine, the same haunted look in their eyes. Court doctors spoke of God's will, but everyone knew the truth. She was the victim of centuries of inbreeding. Maria Anna was never married not because she didn't want to be, but because even in a world where cousin marriage was normal, her condition was too severe. She died at just 32, the real cause of death never written down. In 1479, another royal child was born, Joanna of Castile, daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, the same rulers who funded Columbus's voyages. Her parents were cousins. Joanna grew up intelligent, multilingual, and strong-willed, but the seeds of mental illness had already been sown. Her marriage to Philip the Handsome of Burgundy was a diplomatic triumph and a personal disaster. He was cold, unfaithful, and manipulative. Joanna's deep, desperate love for him was labeled insane. But perhaps it wasn't tea madness at all, it was the reaction of a woman trapped in humiliation with no escape. When Philip died suddenly in 1506, Joanna refused to bury him. She traveled across Spain with his coffin, opening it to kiss him. Her father, and later her son, used this as proof of insanity, locking her away for 46 years in a cold convent cell. Today, many historians believe she wasn't truly mad, but suffered from depression, PTSD, and the genetic vulnerabilities passed down through the Habsburg bloodline. She died in 1555 still a queen, but erased from the world long before her death. If you've ever seen Diego's masterpiece, Las Meninas, you've met Margaret Teresa, the delicate child at the Paintings Center. Born in 1651 to King Philip IV of Spain and his niece, from her earliest portraits, the signs are there. The slight jaw protrusion, the stiff posture hinting at spinal problems, the distant eyes. But her life's path was already set. She would marry her uncle Leopold I, Holy Roman Emperor. At just 15, Margaret entered a marriage without love, her only duty to produce heirs. She endured multiple miscarriages and lost children in infancy. Each pregnancy left her weaker. Finally, she gave birth to a son, but he inherited the same frailty. Margaret Teresa died at just 21. Her body destroyed by genetic disease and the relentless demands of royal duty. 3 women, 3 different lives, one fate. They were pawns on a political chessboard, sacrificed for the illusion of purity, their health, happiness, and very lives spent to preserve a dynasty. And the most chilling part, the system didn't stop, not even when the evidence of its destruction was written across every face in the family portrait. In Part 2, we'll walk into the glittering courts of Versailles and Madrid, meet Anna of Austria and Marie Antoinette, and uncover the final chapter of the Habsburg curse, one that would change Europe forever. In the glittering halls of Versailles, behind the gold leaf and silken curtains, another Habsburg princess was living the hidden cost of her family's obsession. Anna of Austria, born in 1601 to King Philip III of Spain and his niece Margaret of Austria, entered the world already burdened by the weight of her bloodline. As a child in Madrid, she developed slowly, her speech difficult, her eating labored by a jaw that protruded noticeably. Alongside these physical traits came the invisible scars, anxiety, depression, and a constant sense of unease. At just 14, Anna was sent to France to marry King Louis XIII, sealing a fragile peace between two nations long at war. The French court welcomed her with pageantry, but the reality was cold. Louis was distant, battling his own inner struggles, and their marriage quickly became a union of political necessity rather than affection. The pressure to produce a male heir was relentless. Anna endured miscarriages, infant deaths, and the cruel whispers of courtiers who blamed her entirely. Physicians prescribed painful, humiliating treatments and examined her with clinical detachment, never acknowledging the deeper caused generations of inbreeding. Years of childlessness pushed her into isolation. She withdrew from public life, hiding in her apartments, clinging to religious rituals for comfort. Then, after 23 years of marriage, the impossible happened. She gave birth to a healthy son, the future Louis XIV, the Sun King. 2 years later, a second son followed. The court celebrated, but Anna's health never recovered. She remained fragile, plagued by chronic illnesses, until her death in 1666. Decades later, another Habsburg daughter would walk into Versa Marie Antoinette, born in 1755 to Empress Maria Theresa of Austria and Francis I. Holy Roman Emperor, Marie inherited the family's distinctive jawline and, more dangerously, its hidden genetic burdens. Sent to France at just 14 to marry the future Louis XVI, she found herself in a marriage that was troubled from the start. Both she and her husband faced physical and psychological challenges likely linked to their inbred heritage. For 7 years, the marriage remained unconsummated, fueling vicious gossip. Physicians examined Marie repeatedly, searching for a physical flaw, never considering the possibility that both partners' difficulties lay deeper in the very genes they had been born with. When she finally became pregnant, her struggles continued. Severe morning sickness, anxiety, miscarriages, and the grief of losing children in infancy. Each loss carved away at her spirit. As France's political climate darkened, Marie's emotional fragility became a weapon for her enemies. She was painted as reckless, out of touch, even cruel, though in truth she was overwhelmed by the chaos surrounding her. During her imprisonment, guards reported moments where she seemed lost, confused, retreating inward. At her execution in 1793, she met death with dignity, but also with the resignation of someone who had lived her life under forces she could never control, while these women became symbols in history books. The deeper tragedy lay with the countless others, whose names we will never know, the Spanish infantas of the late 17th and early 18th centuries. They were the daughters and granddaughters of Charles II of Spain, a king so inbred his genetic coefficient was higher than that of a child born to siblings. Charles was impotent, epileptic, and possibly intellectually disabled, the end result of 16 generations of closed-circle marriage. His sisters and female cousins fared little better. These women suffered developmental delays, seizures, respiratory failure, and severe deformities. Yet they were still expected to marry always to more cousins and produce heirs. Letters between them reveal a heartbreaking cycle of miscarriages, stillbirths, and children so sickly they could not survive. They lived in fear of pregnancy, knowing each one could kill them or bring another damaged child into the world. Modern genetics explains what the courts of the time refused to admit. Inbreeding increases the chance of inheriting 2 copies of harmful recessive genes, leading to physical deformities, mental illness, infertility, and immune deficiencies. The Habsburg jaw was the visible emblem of a much deeper rototo immune disorders, epilepsy, depression, and reproductive failure. The system could have changed. The evidence was there, written in medical reports and painted in royal portraits. But political alliances mattered more than human suffering. Even the Catholic Church, which could have refused these unions, instead granted dispensations to make them legal. The women themselves, raised to believe their blood was sacred, sometimes embraced the very marriages that would destroy them. It all ended with Charles II's death in 1700, childless and broken, triggering the War of Spanish Succession. His death marked the collapse of the Spanish Habsburg line and a slow shift away from the most extreme forms of royal inbreeding. The women who lived through this were not just historical footnotes or genetic case studies, they were daughters, wives, and mothers who deserved lives free from the burdens placed upon them. Their suffering gave science crucial knowledge about genetics, but it also left us with a moral lesson. No lineage, no political goal, no tradition is worth the systematic destruction of human health and dignity. They lived and died under the curse of a pure bloodline. And though the curse has ended, Their stories remain warning us never to confuse purity with strength and never to place power above humanity.